Here is the recap of the 9th season of Supernatural. After the ritual went wrong, Sam fell into a coma, and Dean is trying to find a way to save him. Cass doesn't answer his call, so Dean asks all the other angels for help. Soon, one appears and attacks him. The stranger wants to know where Cass is, since it's because of him that heaven is now closed. Another angel, Ezekiel, comes to Dean's aid and saves him. Meanwhile, Cass realizes that Metatron has stolen his grace, and now he is just a human. Cass finds a way to contact Dean and tells him what happened, then learns about Ezekiel and says he can be trusted. Cass intends to go to the Winchesters, but Dean suggests he head straight to the bunker, since an entire heavenly army is searching for him. Angels burst into the hospital after hearing Dean's call. They find him and demand he hand over Cass, and when he manages to banish them, Ezekiel delivers the sad news. It turns out Sam's condition is worse than he thought, and he is indeed dying. The only chance to save him is to possess him. Realizing there is no other way out, Dean agrees. Meanwhile, Sam meets death in his subconscious. Sam makes him promise that this time he will die once and for all. At that moment, Ezekiel appears in the guise of Dean and persuades Sam to keep fighting. Thus, he tricks Sam into agreeing to be possessed, and shortly thereafter, he leaves the hospital with Dean. Ezekiel asks him not to tell his brother anything, because if he finds out that he is an angel, the main character might cast him out, and then Sam would die. Sam comes back to his senses, and the brothers head to the bunker to see Kevin. They bring Crowley there as well. The prophet is furious, since the king of hell killed his mother, but the Winchesters convince him that the demon will still be useful to them, and that they'll later give him the chance to kill him. Soon, the main characters arrive to the bus where the mass murder took place. After examining the bodies, the hunters realize that the victims were possessed. Moreover, on the surveillance footage, the guys see Abaddon and can't figure out how she managed to survive. However, they don't have to wait long, and soon the Knight of Hell makes contact. It turns out she has kidnapped 2 hunters and threatens to kill them if the Winchesters don't hurry. The brothers head straight into the trap, and in the meantime they ask Kevin to search the Men of Letters records for information on how to kill Abaddon. As expected, the Winchesters fall into a trap. Abaddon grabs Dean and demands that he hand over Crowley, while other demons beat Sam nearly to death. When Sam loses consciousness, Zeke takes his place. The angel quickly dispatches the demons, then grabs a knife so Dean can somehow explain to Sam how he single-handedly killed so many demons. Abaddon vanishes, and Dean has to lie to Sam again about what happened when he comes back to his senses. Several days have passed, and Cass still hasn't shown up. Dean and Sam start to get worried and try to track him down by monitoring news reports of strange deaths. That's how they come across a deceased pharmacist who had been possessed by an angel and tried to kill Cass, but Cass was quicker than him. Among his belongings, the main characters find a video recording of Reverend Boyle's sermon, in which he urges his congregation to let angels in. It turns out that it was thanks to him that the angels were able to find vessels for themselves more quickly. Meanwhile, Cass spends some time at a church shelter, and soon finds himself at a cafe, where he meets April. She shares her food with him, and when she sees him again that evening, she invites him to her home, and for the first time since arriving on Earth, Cass spends the night with a woman. However, in the morning, it turns out that she is a reaper sent by Bartholomew. She tries to force the truth out of him about Metatron's spell, hoping to find a way to restore everything to normal. But Cass really knows nothing. At that moment, the Winchesters burst into the house. April knocks Sam out and kills Cass, and then Dean plunges his blade into her. Zeke comes to the rescue and heals Cass. The trio returns to the bunker, but Zeke gives Dean an ultimatum. If Cass stays with them, he'll surely attract other angels, and then he'll have to leave Sam's body to save himself. But Sam is still too weak and won't survive it. Realizing there's no choice, Dean asks Cass to leave, without explaining the real reasons to either him or his brother. Sam recalls Kevin's words about how on the night the angels fell, the lamps on the table began to light up in a specific order. Sam suspects that they might somehow indicate the angels' location, and if that's the case, they'll be able to track the heavenly army and thus save Cass. To figure out how it works, the main characters go to the computer the panel is connected to. But the device is several decades old, and they can't figure it out on their own. So they decide to call Charlie for help. She arrives and handles the difficult task, but just then it turns out that the main characters have dropped a vessel containing the imprisoned hunter Dorothy and a powerful witch. According to archival records, the witch had tried to find something important from the men of letters in the last century, but back then no one could figure out what exactly it was. Fortunately, this time the task is made easier thanks to Crowley, who managed to extract the information from the witch. It turns out she needs the key to the land of Oz. With it, she will return there and finish what she started, destroying it. Dean finds the key first, but the witch literally snatches it from his hands and then tries to kill him. However, Charlie shields him with her body and dies. Dean calls out to Zeke and asks him to bring her back to life. The angel agrees, warning that it will take him longer to heal himself and Sam. Dean takes the risk and saves Charlie. Soon, Dorothy remembers the red shoes and, together with Charlie, takes them, though by this point the Winchesters, now controlled by the witch, have caught up to them. Dorothy distracts the hunters, and Charlie drives the heels into the witch's head, killing her. The boys come to their senses and learn that their friend has decided to go with Dorothy to the land of Oz to become the very hero she always wanted to be. A few days later, Sam suggests taking on a new case, and the brothers head to a crime scene where a taxidermist has been literally crushed to death. There are no witnesses to the murder, and no clues as to who could have done it. However, another strange murder soon occurs, this time at an animal shelter. After examining the crime scene, the main characters find a single connecting link, which turns out to be the taxidermist's dog. She is in fact the only witness to the deaths of the two victims, so the guys bring Kevin into the case. In the Men of Letters archives, the prophet finds an Eskimo spell that allows a person to understand the language of animals for a short time. Dean drinks the potion, and following the dog's lead, the Winchesters return to the shelter, where Dean questions all the stray animals. This is how the main characters learn that the killer is indeed there, though he is actually just an ordinary man with an incurable form of cancer. Leo has simply mastered a couple of magical tricks and can now temporarily gain the power of whatever animal he eats. Leo eats the wolf's guts and gains its strength, intending to defeat Dean, but Dean manages to lure Leo into a trap and set the stray dogs he had previously released from the shelter on him. In the end, Leo dies, and the Winchesters find new owners for the taxidermist's dog. Kevin keeps trying to translate the tablet, but in the end he manages to translate it into a dead language, the meaning of which is still unknown to the world. The trio decides to comb through the Men of Letters archives, when suddenly Dean gets a call from Cass, who reports a string of deaths. He heads to the crime scene and sees pink stains everywhere. The sheriff tells him that the poor victims were literally torn to pieces, and the pink color is nothing other than their internal organs. Dean finds Cass and convinces him to go to the next murder scene, where the situation becomes a little clearer. It turns out that Ephraim is behind all of this. The angel is meant to ease the suffering of people who long for death, but since he has only recently arrived on Earth, he does not yet understand that not every mention of death reflects the speaker's true desire. Therefore, he kills everyone who thinks about death. Soon Ephraim finds Cass. The angel tries to kill him, but Dean arrives just in time to help Cass deal with Ephraim. Afterward, he drives his friend to the store where he now works and apologizes for kicking him out of the bunker. He suggests that Cass start over as a human, staying out of the eternal conflict between good and evil. Meanwhile, Kevin and Sam can't find the right interpretation of the tablet, so they agree to a deal with Crowley, who, as it turns out, can translate the necessary fragment. The King of Hell asks in return to be allowed to contact Abaddon. This is how he learns that the Knight of Hell is doubling the number of souls in Hell by violating the terms of the deals that demons made with humans for 10 years. Crowley fulfills his part of the agreement and tells the main characters that Metatron's spell is irreversible. Dean gets a call from Sonny asking for help, and the brothers immediately head out to assist him. That's how Sam learns that, as a teenager, his brother spent several months in a boarding school after being sent there for stealing. Their father had decided to teach him a lesson and left him there for a while. That's where he met Sonny. The thing is, a boarding school employee recently died under strange circumstances, and the guy is convinced that what happened is connected to the paranormal. After questioning a boarding school employee, the main characters conclude that a vengeful spirit is behind it all and burn the remains of a man who had reasons to dislike the victim. But the string of deaths continues, and it becomes clear that they jump to conclusions. The Winchesters have to go back and search for clues all over again. It turns out it was all about a boy named Timmy, or rather, his mother, who died in a car explosion, but managed to push her son out of the car a second before it happened. Then, a frightened Timmy called out to her, and she came, though it wasn't his mother anymore, but her spirit. Now the ghost is killing anyone she thinks might be a threat to her son. Realizing that he is the one keeping her in the world of the living, Dean asks her to let him go. Timmy says goodbye to his mom, and the ghost disappears. Soon, Jody calls the boys and assigns them a new case. The main characters arrive at the scene and interview a witness who saw a woman literally vanish into a bright light. As the investigation unfolds, it becomes clear that this isn't the only such incident in the city, and that all the victims were members of the same church. There, the brothers meet Bonnie. She talks about the sanctity of vows and asks them to sign a pledge promising to remain virgins. The hunters sign the papers and join the other worshippers, among whom Dean notices a woman named Susie. She seems familiar to him, but he can't remember where he's seen her. However, soon after he offers to walk her home, the situation becomes clear. She used to star in adult films. In the end, the couple give in to passion and break their vow, after which they too vanish in a bright flash. The main characters come to their senses somewhere in a basement along with the rest of the vanished people. Meanwhile, Jody and Sam are trying to figure out who they're actually dealing with. They realize they're facing the Roman goddess Vesta, who surrounded herself with virgins and killed those who couldn't preserve their innocence. Dean manages to call Sam, and the main characters find out where they're being held. However, Vesta knocks Sam out, and now Jody has to fight her alone. The odds are stacked against her, and the sheriff is nearly killed, but Sam regains consciousness and distracts the goddess, while Jody kills her. Sam decides to tell his brother about Vesta's words, as she had been puzzled by the question of who he was. Dean can no longer bear to see his brother suffer and decides to tell him about Zeke, but the angel takes control of Sam's body and begs Dean not to do it, because otherwise Sam will cast him out, and Sam himself will die, since he is still too weak. So Dean has to keep hiding the truth. Meanwhile, the angels split into factions and began fighting among themselves. Thus, Varfolm's followers clashed with Malachia's group and were killed. The massacre drew public attention, and not only the Winchesters but also Cass arrived at the scene of the crime. Zeke is against his presence and reminds Dean that Cass had better leave. Then they decide to get some fresh air and step out of the cafe, where Metatron is waiting for him. It turns out that Zeke isn't actually who he claims to be. His real name is Gadriel, and it was he who once let Lucifer into the garden, where the archangel began to do terrible things, for which he was banished to the strictest heavenly prison. Metatron offers Gadriel to join him, and together create a new heaven, where they will be the ones to rule. At first, the angel didn't want to do this, but he soon agreed. However, Metatron isn't satisfied with just his word, and as a sign of loyalty, he asks him to kill one person for him. Meanwhile, Cass is taken captive by Malachi, who, like the others, believes he knows how to set things right and reverse Metatron's spell. Malachi leaves, instructing his trusted aide to extract the necessary information from Cass. In the end, Cass manages to trick the angel and steal his grace, thereby regaining his powers. Cass immediately calls Dean and tells him what he heard from the angels, stating that the real Zeke died in the fall, which means that whoever is impersonating him could be dangerous. Dean asks Kevin to find a spell capable of temporarily disabling the angel and to convince his brother to expel the imposter. But things don't go according to plan, because Gadriel found out about the plan in advance and damaged the symbols on the door, so the spell didn't work. The angel intends to leave the bunker, but first he carries out Metatron's order and kills Kevin. Dean tells his friend what happened, and Cass suggests using the same method the demons use to torture alphas. They go to Crowley for help, and the King of Hell agrees to assist in saving Sam. Soon, the guys find the escaped angel and leave him with Crowley. They finally learn that they're dealing with Gadriel, but they can't get through to Sam. Dean asks Cass to possess his brother and help him on a subconscious level, but the angel can't take over a vessel without permission, something the demon, however, is capable of. At first, Dean refuses, but soon, realizing there's no other way out, he agrees, promising Crowley his freedom if he helps save Sam. In the end, the plan works, and Gadriel leaves his body. Sam is angry that his brother allowed an angel to take possession of his body. The brothers argue, and Dean suggests they work separately from now on, fearing that he is the source of all the trouble for their family and loved ones. Sam doesn't stop his brother, and Dean leaves. Dean is mourning Kevin at a bar when Crowley shows up and suggests they team up to kill Abaddon. The thing is, the demon who knew how to do it was killed by John, and now the King of Hell thinks they might find something useful in his journal. From his father's notes, Dean tracks down the hunter Tara, who gives him a search spell. That's how the trio finds the location. However, upon arriving there, Crowley realizes they've made a mistake, since they've shown up at Kane's house. At first, he refuses to tell them about the first blade capable of killing the Knights of Hell, and then he decides to put Dean to the test by letting the demons surrounding his house attack him. Winchester lives up to expectations, and Kane tells his story. It turns out that he created the Knights of Hell, but then met Colette and decided to step back from the business, though the demons didn't like that. He was then forced to destroy all the knights, but he couldn't kill one of them because Abaddon had possessed his wife and broken her bones. Before she died, his beloved made him promise never to kill anyone again. He then threw his blade into the ocean and began living as a hermit. Nevertheless, in Dean, he saw his successor, who would be able to avenge Colette's death. He gives Dean the mark that Lucifer left him. Only when paired with it will the blade work, and Abaddon will die. Crowley is about to set out in search of the blade, but before he does, Dean declares that he knows everything. He has figured out that Crowley deliberately orchestrated all of this and pretended not to know about Kane and his connection to the Knight of Hell. The demon doesn't deny his trickery, justifying it by saying he needed to prove to Kane that Dean is worthy of becoming his successor. Meanwhile, Cass learns that a fragment of Gadriel's grace remains inside Sam. He tries to extract it so they can track down the angel. However, the extraction causes Sam unbearable pain, and Cass is forced to stop. It's been 6 months since Garth disappeared, and now the main characters hear on the police radio that he's been captured. The Winchesters head to the hospital, but when he sees them, the guy runs away. The brothers decide to track down the hunter together and then go their separate ways. They soon find him, but it turns out he has changed a lot since their last meeting. It turns out that a few months ago he was hunting a werewolf, and the werewolf bit him. At that point, Garth decided to end his life, knowing there was no cure, but Bess saved him. She is a second-generation werewolf. Feelings developed between them, and soon the couple got married. Now Garth lives in the pack and assures the hunters that they are not dangerous to humans, since they feed on animal entrails. Dean decides to see for himself, so he agrees to come to Reverend Myers' house for dinner. There, he meets the pack of werewolves and learns that each of them wears a silver pendant around their neck as a reminder of their vulnerability. Despite the outward harmony, Dean remains wary, and for good reason. Soon the Winchesters are lured into a trap by the local sheriff, who, as it turns out, is also a werewolf with the same pendant as the others. Dean decides to pay the Reverend a visit, while Sam heads to Garth and Bess's house but doesn't find them. Instead, he himself is kidnapped by other werewolves. Meanwhile, Dean learns from Myers that his pack doesn't follow the old rules, since they've renounced revenge and are trying to coexist peacefully with humans. Realizing they've miscalculated somewhere, Dean tries to find Sam and soon arrives at a barn where Myers' wife has dragged him, Garth, and Bess. It turns out her ancestors were werewolves and honored the traditions, but everything changed with the Reverend, and now they no longer strike fear into people and she doesn't like that. So she decided to kill all three of them to stir up rage in the others, but Dean thwarted her plan. In the end, the woman dies, and Garth and Bess return home. Soon, the main characters take on a new case and investigate the strange murder of the winner of a hot dog eating contest. Witnesses claim that just a few hours earlier, the man weighed nearly 150 kilograms, yet the body appears to have lost nearly 100 kilograms. Soon, a similar incident occurs involving a woman at the gym who was trying to fit into her wedding dress but didn't make it in time. After questioning the trainer, Dean notices a strange mark on her back, exactly the same as the one on the victim. It soon turns out that she too lost a lot of weight after visiting a spa, where the main characters go undercover as fitness trainers. There they meet the owners of the center. Maritza and her husband hire the hunters, and the Winchesters begin their investigation. It turns out that a sleeping pill is being added to the local pudding, and everyone who underwent Maritza's cupping therapy has marks on their backs exactly like those of the victims. Maritza's husband learns that hunters are tracking them and asks her to get rid of all the evidence, but the Winchesters catch her. That's how they discover that the couple are Pishtaco. These creatures are akin to parasites. They suck the fat out of humans but don't kill them. Over the years, they've adapted to living among humans and even opened a center where they help people lose weight while still eating. Maritza has a brother, Lorenzo, who has gone off the rails. He is the one who killed all the victims. The Winchesters have to find him and stop him, but the main characters decide to let Maritza go after all, since she has adapted to life and doesn't harm people. A light begins to flicker in the bunker, and all the signs point to the presence of a ghost. This trapped spirit is Kevin. Soon, the former prophet manages to reveal himself. The thing is, after the gates of heaven close, souls can't go up and end up bound to the place where they died. The guy asks for help, because he's found out that his mom is still alive. So the brothers find Linda, and then give her the chance to kill her tormentor. Meanwhile, Cass attends the funeral of his longtime angel friend Rebecca, where he meets Elijah. The angel assures him that after the fall, Rebecca had not maintained contact with Metatron, and had founded her own faction of angels who wanted to live in peace with humans. But then Bartholomew's followers came and killed them all. Soon, they find Cass as well. He is brought before Bartholomew, and the angels recall the days of the Civil War when Cass was his commander. Bartholomew proposes that they become allies in the fight against Metatron. Then he asks him to kill Elijah, and when Cass refuses, he tries to attack him. Cass draws his blade and kills Bartholomew, and a short time later, the followers find him. It turns out that Cass has inspired them to fight, and now they are ready to swear allegiance to him. Meanwhile, the Winchesters bring Linda to the bunker and give her Kevin's belongings, to which his spirit is bound. The woman and her ghostly son return home, so she can look after him until heaven reopens and his soul can find peace. Relations between the brothers remain strained because of Gadriel, and even the late Kevin's request for them to make peace doesn't help much. However, they continue to work together and set out to investigate yet another mysterious death. There, they run into some old acquaintances who run a blog about the paranormal and are constantly looking for trouble. Soon they find Harry and Ed in a cafe and ask them to leave town, but they have no intention of listening and stay, and after a while, another person dies. At the ghost hunter's instigation, the whole town begins to believe in a certain thin man, who is the killer. But it turns out that Ed made him up so that Harry wouldn't go off on his own and would stay with him. This deception nearly cost his friend his life. Soon the Winchesters figure out that there's nothing supernatural about this situation. Hiding behind the thin man's mask is a simple waiter, aided by the local sheriff. They're just crazy people who kill anyone who's ever wronged them. In the end, the main characters kill them both, and then witness a fight between Harry and Ed. Harry never managed to forgive his friend for the deception and decided to leave. It's been almost a month since Cain gave Dean the mark, but Crowley doesn't seem to be in any hurry to find the blade capable of killing Abaddon. And yet, the former king of hell soon gets in touch and asks the Winchesters for help. The thing is, after that ritual in the church last season, when Sam nearly restored his humanity, Crowley began exhibiting behavior that was strange for a demon. He spends days watching movies and eating pizza, getting upset over every setback. It turns out he was still searching for the blade, which, as it turns out, had long since been recovered from the ocean floor and sold several times. The last lead to the artifact runs out at the museum, where the demons tried to break in. The blade's former owner reports that a certain Magnus has taken an interest in the relic. It turns out he was a man of letters who developed anti-demonic protection for the bunker and was later expelled from the community. With Crowley's help, the guys find Magnus, but he has no intention of handing over the first blade. The man wants to add Cain's mark to his collection of relics, so he tries to keep Dean trapped in his invisible hideout. Sam and Crowley find a spell that helps manifest the portal and come to the rescue. In the end, Dean grabs the blade and decapitates Magnus with it, after which he seems to go into a daze, but soon regains control. Sam reminds his brother that now that they have the blade, they don't need Crowley and can kill him. But the demon had anticipated this, so he steals the blade and will keep it until they get closer to Abaddon. Sam suggests taking on a new case, but Dean insists he'll stay at the bunker and continue searching for Abaddon. He doesn't admit that, after killing Magnus, he felt the blade's power, and now feels completely different. Sam arrives in a small town and learns that strange events have been occurring there frequently lately. And then he meets Julia. The woman immediately recognizes him as a man of letters and tells him about meeting Henry and Josie many years ago. It turns out she knew that Abaddon had taken over Josie's body, and that Josie had sacrificed herself for Henry, with whom she was secretly in love. Julia kept her knowledge hidden, hoping to forget what had happened as if it were a terrible dream. Thanks to Julia's story, Sam finds a demon who serves Abaddon. That's how he learns that the Knight of Hell is stealing people's souls, forcing them to do crazy things. He then turns them into demons to strengthen his power with a new army. Sam kills Abaddon's servant and frees the souls, thereby returning them to their vessels. Meanwhile, Crowley figures out what's going on with Dean, but still reminds him of the need to find Abaddon as soon as possible and kill her. He then puts Dean to the test by staging a situation in which a hunter is supposedly about to attack him, and Dean saves him. This is how Crowley realizes that Dean is ready for the next battle. Cass follows the sound of an ancient cymbal and finds herself in a warehouse surrounded by dozens of slain angels. One of them managed to survive. From her, Cass learns that Gadriel is responsible for the deaths of her fellow angels. He had offered them the choice of joining Metatron and going to heaven or dying. Cass heals her and then contacts the Winchesters. The trio realizes that Gadriel killed Kevin at Metatron's behest. Soon it turns out that the exact same symbol was found at the scenes of other mass murders. The Winchesters head to the city where Gadriel is supposed to appear, while Cass goes to another one. But their plans change when Gabriel shows up at the doorstep. The Archangel declares that he faked his death and had been hiding in paradise all this time, but fell from heaven to earth just like everyone else. In the end, Cass realizes that it's all an illusion. A while later, he regains consciousness in Metatron's office and learns of his scheme. It turns out he wants Cass to lead the rebellious angels and march them to their certain doom against him. In the end, Metatron will become the hero, and Cass will be the villain. For this role, Metatron promises the angel not only a place in heaven, but also an endless source of energy to replace the stolen grace, which is gradually fading and will destroy him from within. They don't have time to finalize the deal, because Metatron learns of Gadriel's abduction. He offers the Winchesters a deal. They hand Gadriel over to him, and he'll return Cass to them. The brothers have no choice but to agree to his terms. Soon, Jody assigns the Winchesters another case, and they pick up the trail of a vampire nest. The hunters try to find out something about the vampires from a young woman named Alex, whom, apparently, they kidnapped several years ago, and all this time she has been their living food source. She isn't very talkative, so while they search for the vampire nest, Jody takes her out of town, and the Winchesters find one of the vampires in the meantime. From him, they learn that their mother always treated Alex differently, forgiving her everything and forbidding the others from even thinking about turning her. She wasn't their captive. On the contrary, she helped them and lured victims to them. However, she soon grew tired of it and decided to run away. The Winchesters kill the guy and try to warn Jody. But it's already too late, because the nest has come for Alex. The hunters find Jody, who miraculously survived, and tell her they intend to kill them all, including perhaps Alex, since she isn't as innocent as they thought. Jody doesn't believe them and decides to go to the lair to protect her. But the Winchesters are quickly caught, and Jody herself learns that Alex has already been turned. Talking with her mother, she realizes that in the past, she had a loved one named Alex, which is why she named the kidnapped child after her. When the vampire tries to attack the sheriff, Alex helps her by weakening it with the dead man's blood. Jody finishes the job and kills the monster. Sam and Dean arrive in Chicago, where they find themselves in an unusual situation. It turns out that the city has been controlled by several monster clans for many years. One is led by a family of shapeshifters, and the other by a clan of werewolves. The fragile balance is shattered after a massacre at a restaurant, where an unknown figure in a hood with silver claws kills a shapeshifter. Ennis, who lost his fiancée in the clash, craves revenge and tries to figure out what's going on his own. The Winchesters reveal the truth about the monster world to him and warn that there is no turning back once you become a hunter. However, he has no intention of backing down. The investigation leads the main characters to David, who is trying to prevent a war between the clans and find out who is really behind the killings. It soon becomes clear that the attacker is an ordinary man who lost his son at the hands of monsters and decided to pit them against each other. The Winchesters, Ennis, and David join forces to stop him, and at the decisive moment, the guy kills him. Despite Sam's warnings, Ennis takes his first independent step into the world of hunting. Then the Winchesters receive news from Cass about Metatron, forcing them to leave Chicago. Cass captures Ezra, a follower of Metatron, and asks the Winchesters to help with the interrogation. The main characters are surprised to learn that their old friend now commands an entire faction of angels and is trying to stop their senseless war. The hunters agree to help, and soon discover what Ezra is hiding. It turns out there is a portal through which one can reach heaven. The Winchesters leave, and shortly afterward it becomes clear that Ezra has been killed. It turns out there is a Metatron spy in Cass's ranks. Sometime later, Cass meets with Gadriel and tries to persuade him to cooperate, pointing out that Metatron is willing to eliminate even his own allies without hesitation. Cass wants Gadriel to become a double agent and asks him to consider the offer. In the meantime, Abaddon blackmails Crowley with his son Gavin, whom she kidnapped in the 18th century and brought to the present. Abaddon exploits the human emotions that have awakened within the demon, forcing Crowley to agree to a trap for the Winchesters. However, the King of Hell finds a way to warn Dean of the danger by saying a code word. Using Crowley's tip, the brothers obtain the first blade. Abaddon's trap only partially works. In the fight, the mark allows Dean to resist her power, and he kills Abaddon, but he can't stop himself and continues to strike her already dead body, thereby frightening Sam. Later, the brothers argue because Dean kept Crowley's warning a secret and is increasingly falling under the blade's influence. Sam wants to hide the weapon, fearing it awakens something dark in his brother. But Dean refuses, convinced that it is with the blade that he is truly invincible. Sam and Dean arrive at the scene of the explosion at the cafe and meet up with Cass. Among the victims, Cass recognizes one of his angels. Footage from the scene of the tragedy shocks everyone. The angel, shouting that he is doing this for Cass, stabs himself with a blade and explodes. Cass is horrified by what is happening and insists that he never called for such sacrifices. However, it becomes clear that someone is deliberately turning his followers into fanatics. The investigation leads to the conclusion that kamikaze angels are behind the attacks, and one of them is the Reaper Tessa. Sam and Cass go in search of the missing angel and fall into Metatron's trap, who merely mocks Cass's attempts to find a portal to heaven. Meanwhile, Dean tracks down Tessa and learns that she voluntarily agreed to kill herself, unable to bear the screams of lost souls stuck between worlds. When Tessa refuses to reveal the names of the other kamikaze angels, Dean draws his blade, and she stabs herself with it, uttering, "Thank you," before she dies. Meanwhile, Metatron publicly accuses Cass of orchestrating the attacks and lures the angels to his side by promising them a path to heaven. The remaining followers demand that Cass prove his loyalty by executing Dean, but he refuses, thereby losing his army. Back at the bunker, Sam and Dean argue over the lies and the blade. Cass remains with the Winchesters, while Gadriel appears and offers to help in the fight against Metatron. At that moment, Dean, completely succumbing to the influence of Cain's mark, suddenly stabs him with the blade, thereby confirming Sam's fears. The main characters manage to take the blade from Dean and lock him in a dungeon. Cass heals Gadriel, thereby completely exhausting himself. Dean starts coughing up blood and summons Crowley. Demon explains that Cain's mark is destroying him from the inside. Without killing, Dean's condition worsens, to the point of death. Realizing that time is almost up, Dean asks Crowley to help him escape. Upon returning to the bunker, Sam and Cass discover that Dean has vanished along with the blade. Gadriel is convinced that Dean is their only chance to stop Metatron, who has been empowered by the tablet. Cass suggests breaking into Metatron's office and destroying the tablet, thereby stripping him of his power. They almost succeed, but end up in a heavenly prison. Realizing there's no other way to stop Metatron, Gadriel sacrifices himself by blowing up the prison and freeing Cass. Meanwhile, Dean and Crowley pick up Metatron's trail. Sam catches up to his brother and admits that no matter how scared he is, they have to see this through together. However, just before the final showdown, Dean knocks Sam unconscious and heads off to face Metatron alone, considering this battle to be his own. The older brother finds the angel at a homeless encampment. Despite the power of the mark, he is defeated and mortally wounded right before Sam's eyes. At that very moment, Cass destroys the tablet and imprisons Metatron. Sam desperately tries to save his brother, but Dean dies in his arms. Sam brings his brother's body to the bunker and summons Crowley, demanding he bring him back. The demon admits he didn't tell the whole truth. In the past, Cain also died by his own blade, but the mark wouldn't let him go, turning him into a demon. Crowley places the blade in Dean's hand, after which he opens his eyes. This is the end of the 9th season. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click the like button. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.